This is a What's Up the Sports podcast for Monday, the 14th of November. I'm Randy Kure. We are live via Twitter Spaces. Thank you so much for joining us. Or if you are downloading today's episode or catching us on YouTube, the Roundtable has assembled and really thrilled to be joined by a couple of dear friends who many years ago we took part and dominated Seneca's radio broadcasting program. Tony Antoniou is back, of course. Tony, what's going on?
Not much, Randy. How are you? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a little while, and thank you as always. And even more so, Dan Leggieri is back. It's been over 6 months since he's appeared on the podcast. Always grateful for Dano to make some time for us. Dano, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, Randy. Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. My pleasure. On today's episode, we're going to go quite heavy with the Maple Leaf as the 2022 Men's World Cup is less than 2 weeks away. Some pro athletes are facing discipline for their off-play actions. One a repeat offender, if you will. The other a blue chip NHL prospect. In rapid fire, can baseball fans accept the Houston Astros as a true World Series champion? Is Hollywood going to invade our nation's capital of Ottawa? And Canada's men's team has qualified for another World Cup. That and a lot more, guys. Lo and behold, the World Cup. As the weather gets colder here in Southern Ontario, I didn't check the temperature officially, but it was give or take, I believe it was around 3-4 degrees. I didn't even step foot outside. But of course, this time of the year, what better way to get prepared for a World Cup of soccer? Very quickly, and I did not prepare you boys with this trivia question. Can you tell me the day when Russia and Qatar were announced as hosts for the World Cup? I looked this up, and if you do remember, the World Cup for both Russia and Qatar was announced on the same day. And I remember it was a really long time ago. Can you even give me a year for when it was announced?
My guess would be 2018 was Russia. So what my last trip to Cuba was 20 no, my give me a second here. I'm
Yeah,
stumbling
no,
my
I
words.
know that I know that I threw you this wrench, but I wanted to make sure
I
that you were not prepared for
I think
this
I think
question.
20 I think 2021 was when they announced officially that Canada was hosting, right, with the States and Mexico. So that was, I'm going to say 2015.
2015, Dano, any idea?
Oh my God, I have no idea. Don't even care to venture a guess. I'm curious. I'm waiting with bated breath with the
You're
weather to
waiting
know
with
what
bated
this
breath.
was.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
On December 2nd, it would be 12 years since that very announcement. So in 2010, it was announced when Russia and Qatar were awarded this World Cup. And that means, and I also looked this up as well, Alphonso Davies was 10 years and 1 month old. So, but anyway, that's another topic. But yeah, I just found it amazing. It felt so long ago, and in fact, it was over a decade ago when Russia and Qatar were announced the World Cup, and less than 2 weeks away, the Qatari World Cup will commence. Tony, you and I have been to a number of men's national matches. How excited are you now that Canada is less than 2 weeks away of participating in this World Cup and the World Cup in
It's
general, of course?
it's winding up again. It's getting exciting again. I was a little meh over the kind of the novelty kind of wore off for a bit, and I think when Canada pulled the protest, it left a bad taste in my mouth. To be honest with you, if Canada wasn't in this World Cup, I wouldn't have been as excited for it, just given the optics, it being in November, the amount of injuries going into this World Cup by so many different players that were key factors in their team. But you know what? We're getting closer. Watching some of the video of the Canada players' families' reactions to their boys being announced to the national team has kind of sucked me in a little bit more. Not gonna lie, I watched. You sent me the or you posted the Liam Fraser one.
Yep.
And today, Toronto FC sent a nice gift package to their 3 guys who are going, and it's a lot of emotion. So I'm not going to lie to you. There's a little bit of salty discharge that came out of my eyes watching some of that, and it's all about family. So anyway, the more I'm seeing it, the more I'm getting a little more excited.
I mean, I could totally appreciate, and we didn't. I didn't really think about how this whole thing has evolved since Canada qualified officially against Jamaica, but I could definitely see how it does feel a little bit foreign with this World Cup being in November, and if Canada wasn't taking part in it, that maybe we as a community would not be as interested. But Dano, I could distinctly remember asking you the last time you appeared on the podcast what your perception is of the World Cup because Italy is not in it. However, the country you were born and raised in is in it. Does it feel similar to you? You did say it did feel strange when we did chat, but all those months ago. But does it feel similar, the excitement of the World Cup?
No, but I don't know what to attribute it to be honest. I don't know if it's because Italy's not in it, because honestly, if I look back, leading up to the Euro Cup or not the last World Cup, because Italy failed to qualify for that one as well, but the one before that, my excitement for these types of tournaments is just different these days. It's to Tony's point where it's like, I know it's coming. I know I should be excited about it, but I don't know that I'm in gear yet. But with each passing day, it gets more and more real. It gets more and more exciting, just because at the end of the day, we're big sports fans. So, you look forward to these sort of world tournaments that put that best on best, and you always create these spectacular memories within ourselves and our families. Even it's maybe tradition within our families. So it's I'm sure once the tournament gets going, once Canada's first game rolls around against Belgium, the country will start buzzing, I feel, and then Italy be damned. We'll have to just put our jerseys aside for now, or turn them inside out, and that proudly rep that red and white.
And it officially starts the entire World Cup on the 20th with the host Qatar facing Ecuador. And of course, if the two of you remember, I remember distinctly that the favorites to host the 2018 World Cup and the 2022 World Cup were England and the United States. It was laughed at to the fact that Russia and Qatar were going to be hosts. Lo and behold, FIFA had some different plans. And with this World Cup being in November, I was a little intrigued about it. I will be honest with you, because as we have grown with the World Cup being in June, that it is a different dynamic, this being in November. But who knows? Who knows how intrigued I would be for this World Cup if our country wasn't in it. But it just got me to thinking more about locations for not only World Cups, but for maybe Olympics as well. And if we could take away the human element aside, the atrocities aside, apparently a number of human rights violations had taken place with the construction of these stadiums. Dano, Does the location of these massive tournaments and events make a difference to you? Soccer is the global game. Do you think that there might be value in this tournament being in countries like Australia, for example? The last Euro was in a collection of countries throughout Europe. Uh, is there something to maybe thinking outside the box, not having it in these soccer mad countries?
Um, Truthfully, it should matter. I don't know how you take atrocities and put them to the side. I know what you're trying to say, and I know how you're trying to phrase the question, but that's a big one. Truthfully, it's a big one. You know, a lot of Canadians are heading over to watch Canada play because this is the first time they're going to be in the World Cup in 36 years, I think it is. Um, and I get it. You want to be there. You want to witness history. You want to watch them win their first game in the World Cup, and it might be the first one ever. I'm not even sure, to be honest. But you want to be able to be there and, like you said, to support this global game, witness it. See the best players. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't profess to be an expert on geopolitical issues or world affairs for that matter. But I think that there's a danger in putting the atrocities to the side, even if it's for a month. I have a friend who's heading over there to watch a few Canadian games. I have another friend who's just moved there for the calendar year to teach English at schools over there, and he used the World Cup as an excuse to get over there and see what it's all about. And they're telling me that they're already seeing and hearing reports, and they may be over here already too, but they're being told to, I guess, their police force or their morality division or whoever's over there, controlling how people think and behave and, celebrate who they are. They're telling them to, don't kill any gays, for 30 days. So while the world's watching us, kill them all now, or wait to persecute them after everybody leaves, or, make sure that you don't, put in jail a Canadian or an American or an Australian because they're drunk in public. These sort of things that it's the rules that they live by when the World Cup is not there. So it should matter. Truthfully, it should. I think I'm on Team Philip Lahm when he said just this last week that it was a mistake to award Qatar the World Cup, and Russia's maybe a good example of that too. Where again, if I try not to go too far out of my ability to craft meaningful arguments out of stuff that I don't understand. But putting Russia on the world stage like that a few years ago as this friend and ally to democracy and to the way Western worlds want to live and behave, and how we want to treat people and human rights issues and women's rights and trans rights and everybody's rights. And look at him now. Look what he's put himself into. Look who he's really shown himself to be. We can pinpoint politicians or public figures, hockey coaches, even maybe who showed us who they really were. We didn't believe them, so we gave them the key to the city, to this license to sort of print money as far as licensing and merchandising goes. I'm sure Qatar is coming on top here, even tourism dollars. But then to turn around and who knows what they're going to do with that money or how they're going to treat their people in the years to come. So I think it's dangerous. I know that it's boring, even though, to stick to the familiar sites: Australia, Canada, the UK. How many places can you really go before it gets too much? Even the Super Bowl is evident of that. They kept they're looking for outdoor stadiums now because people are just bored of going through the same cities. So I get it. It's entertainment. I get it. It's the world stage. I get it. They want to grow the game globally. But I don't know. I think it was a mistake in the end too. But I don't exactly have the proper authority or knowledge to explain to you just why.
Well, no, I completely hear and agree with everything you had said, and believe me, apparently as many as the assumption is that tens of thousands of construction workers had died from making these facilities, and I mean, how can you have a tournament when more than one person died in deplorable conditions? And believe me, that's something I wasn't looking to sort of bypass and say, hey, let's have a great time anyway, despite the population of a small stadium dying. Um, but I guess the way that I looked at it was in the National Hockey League, when they do have regular season games in Europe, it's always in those same countries like Slovakia and a Sweden. And rarely is it in France or England or Italy. To me, I mean, and we could probably expand this whole topic even further with regards to the World Cup, because there's a lot of socioeconomic issues in a country like Brazil, as well as in the Olympics. And they had those two massive tournaments in the span of 2 years, billions of dollars being spent. South Africa, could they afford stadiums as well? Thinking that there are a lot of economic issues in that country also. Tony, I don't know if
I
you
think,
did want.
sorry, Randy, if I could just jump in, I think you've hit on something important to mention too, where it's all hypocrisy, it's all bullshit anyway. Live Golf was people were up in arms because golfers were going over there and taking Saudi Arabia's money to play golf. When you know, how can we condemn one person or one sport for taking so-called blood money when governments around the country do the exact same thing? So two wrongs make a right here. Are we talking that what level of atrocity or even suppression of human rights disqualifies a country from hosting? Because then you could probably find fault in everybody. Should Canada have the World Cup if we were just exposed to have a terrible history in human rights and treating
Mhm.
people the way that we do? So then where do you draw that line? Who makes that decision to say that Qatar is bad, but Canada is just fine? We can ignore their past or what's happening there currently, just as an example.
But that's
So
not their.
yeah,
That's not Qatar's past. It's their.
yeah,
It's their present. It's probably their future. Um, it all comes down to money. I mean, even Sepp Blatter, which was an empty platitude in my opinion, came out and said it was a mistake giving Qatar the World Cup, but it wasn't a mistake at the time when they were every member of FIFA's delegation was getting bribed for these games. Look, we here in the West, we get to sit here and look at other countries. This should be a lesson for us here in the West, who sit here and talk about our own countries like there's some shithole, hellhole, systemic, everything, dirt holes. But the difference between this side of the world and that side of the world is that there is constantly a striving to be better. There isn't, an ignoring of the past and what it was, but there is a constant strive to do better and be more inclusive and be more. It's just more profitable out in this side of the world to say, this is what we are. We're not a good country, blah, blah, blah. But that's a different story for a different day. Sometimes, other cultures are other cultures, and they knew exactly what they were getting into. And any player who tries
Sorry,
to have
they being FIFA.
yeah, FIFA knew
You're right.
exactly what they were getting into, and they knew it was all about money. It always is about money. Who can be the highest bidder? But they got killed pretty good. I mean, heads rolled from these two decisions, especially Qatar over the last few years. FBI got involved. Heads rolled big time. So I think things will change in FIFA because of it, and you will probably see more of these traditional soccer countries get the games, because it's about money too, infrastructure. These stadiums are ready to go. To have another World Cup in Germany is not a big deal. Have another World Cup in Italy is not a big deal. It's a lot of money you're spending and a lot of lives you're sacrificing for stadiums that are going to be torn down. I mean, one of the stadiums in Qatar is made up of shipping containers, and it'll it'll be collapsible and go away. And just think about how many lives have been lost
Right.
making that. But again, I'll be the first there. Hypocrite, sitting there watching the games, no problem. Don't not everybody can be as brave as Philip Lamb to boycott. I mean, even the United States team are changing the crest on their shirt to the rainbow color in support of gay rights and whatever
Right.
that Qatar doesn't have, and that's all fine and dandy. I mean, again, put something on your shirt, empty platitudes. You want to impress me? Don't go. Boycott the World Cup, right? But I think we're all hypocrites. We're going to watch it and we're going to forget about what's happening in those countries. That's just the reality of it.
Well, and I hate to agree with you, but you're 1,000% right because hey, if you are watching via YouTube, you could see the background behind me, and I could have easily had the stance like Tony and said boycott the World Cup because of all the human rights violations that have taken place. But I rather selfishly am extremely excited about the World Cup. And, I maybe this was a topic that should have been left for the end of this particular segment, but I really do hope that there is some changes. And with regards to soccer, we do know that 2026 is going to be headed to North America. Is it possible that the World Cup will be heading to England in 2030? The rumor is that England is a front runner to host that particular World Cup. In the end, I would love to see. I mean, there is something that I did think was kind of cool about South Africa. I can imagine the kind of atrocities that may have taken place in that country because there are, from what I understand, some very financially starved areas in that country. But these are the times we are living in, and hopefully FIFA and the International Olympic Committee will be making changes to that. Guys, I don't really know how to transition from a topic so deep to how Canada is going to do, but if I can make an attempt, Tony, this men's national side doesn't really have one when it comes to the World Cup. There was one appearance where they did not score a goal in 1986. What do you think is the floor for this squad in terms of their performance for Qatar?
I expect ultra competitive team, a team that's going to have the confidence to go for it. Unlike the Canadian team in '86, which I think they tried to not get killed. I think John Herdman's going to get them to push and not be afraid of the moment. But I can see a tie coming out of it. I hope I'm wrong, but Belgium and Croatia are just. I understand the age of Croatia. Everybody keeps telling me about that, but there's something to be said about a group of players who have been through that grind together, understanding what it takes. And Belgium is Belgium, and even Morocco is going to be a tough team. They added the Chelsea guy Hakim Ziyech to the squad, who was kind of on the outs with the country, but I expect ultra competitiveness. I would not be surprised if they pull a win out against Morocco, let's say, and play two tight ones against Croatia and Belgium. I don't know until they get into that game situation and things are happening all over the place. You can't prepare for that. And they played a friendly against Uruguay. What was it? I guess it was late September. Actually, I was leaving for Cuba September 29th, and you saw they had their struggles against a classy team, one of the upper echelon squads. So it's going to be a challenge for them. We want to get excited, of course, but understand that they're playing real teams now. That's not to say that CONCACAF was not tough, but Belgium and Croatia, man, like this is big time now. Now you're playing with the big boys. So, but I expect ultra competitive team. Hopefully, Alfonso's relatively healthy. Obviously, if he's not at 100%, takes a little bit away from the team. But I think, like I said, John Herdman is a miracle worker. He's as good as he is, like as a tactical coach. He's equally as good as a motivator. So he will get them to another level.
Well, Dano, I don't know how versed you are with Canada's competition, let alone the squad itself. I could imagine, as a big soccer fan, that you have some sort of knowledge. Try and educate me. For somebody who, on the surface, I've been to a lot of matches, but I don't know the game as well as yourself or even Tony. But obviously, Canada is not a soccer powerhouse. Majority of our players, half of our players play in Europe, but Belgium and Croatia are Belgium and Croatia. And as Tony did mention, that the Croatian side is an older squad. Is that really relevant? Do you think that Canada does have a chance with an aging Croatian side and an underachieving Belgian side?
Well, yeah, it's why you play the game, right? You always have a chance, and they've not just squeaked their way into qualifying for this tournament. They've earned their place at the table. So to Tony's point, I think that they'll be a lot of fun to watch. I think they will be a competitive team. And I don't know. It is hard to say. But to your point, yes, it does matter that these teams are these teams. Conventional sports wisdom will tell you that. It's not a science by any means. There's certain teams on paper that should always beat other teams, but they don't. The way the Maple Leafs started this season is evidence of that. But if this is the big stage, if this is the big dance, the playoffs, so to speak, the 3 games and then you're done. This is when experience matters most. If Lukaku's not on the Belgium team, I don't know if that makes as much a difference as some Canadian fans would maybe hope it would. Because to Tony's point, these are experienced teams. These have guys been playing together, for decades, and not just not to diminish again, Canada, but not just in qualifying or in friendly matches. They've been in the big tournament. Croatia was at a 3rd place finish in recent memory. So
they were the finalists in the last World Cup.
There you go. See, so that's my mind. Of course they were. So yeah. So these things you can't discount those qualities about these teams, but should Canada finish first in their league as well, or sorry, in their division? I don't think that would be, or maybe it would be. Maybe it would be.
Don't say it. That would be an absolute shock. Are you kidding me?
But maybe we're that team for this tournament. Maybe we reach the round of 16 or the final 8, just because of our moxie and our stick-to-itiveness and the maple syrup running through our veins. Who knows?
Well, I mean, hey, 2002. Senegal, of all countries, defeated France, who won the World Cup the tournament before. And I mean, I'm not expecting anything per se, but who knows? I mean, it's just so intriguing. And Tony, you kind of stole a little bit of my momentum, because I was thinking that Croatia's age may be a problem, but I get it. This is a side with a very proven track record, isn't it?
Yeah, they have a lot of savvy players. Just starting with Modric in the middle and Perisic on the wing. Watch Perisic. He still is an effective player for Tottenham, and Modric is Modric. But yeah, like there is a vulnerability there, sure, but they know how to get it done, right? They're just a very savvy team. So.
But what do you guys think about this one? It's Canada's not the Miracle on Ice team from 1980s, and here I go with my hockey analogies. That seems to be my
hey,
but
it's all good.
We've got some of the best players on the world stage. We've got Alphonso Davies, who's a star in Germany, the star on the world stage. We've got Jonathan David, who's a star in France. We've got Astoniou, who's a star in Portugal. We've got guys. We've got horses. It's not that we can't it's not that we can't win and not just do it on a fluke either. Like that's why I hesitate to say where I don't know that it would be as big a surprise as it might seem just because we're Canada. But if you objectively look at the players on the teams, I don't know that it's that far of a stretch.
Well, I mean, okay, and I'm sure Tony has a comment in shortly, but when I see Canada barely winning against Mexico in a freezer that was in Edmonton, the Ice Tekka is the reason why I got that Atakube jersey, the black Atakube jersey, where he did the header into the snowbank.
Yeah.
But if it took an incredible save from Boran to not concede a point in that match. And I, after watching that match in Edmonton, especially, yeah, sure, they dominated Jamaica. They finished first in the table and so on. It's CONCACAF. They've never had a significant history. I don't think a CONCACAF team has made it to the semis, let alone maybe they made the quarters. But
we Mexico and the U.S. both did quarters, have done quarterfinals,
have been in the quarters. Okay, but beyond that, nothing. So this is a federation that really hasn't had a lot of major success in the World Cup. A couple of things here and there, and this is the finalist. And Belgium, to me, is on paper looks like a dream team, at least in years past. I haven't
always do.
Yeah, and
they
so
do. Yeah.
So then why? Well, Tony, do you have any idea why Belgium really hasn't taken that leap?
I don't. I just said, you know what? They're more than good enough to contend for a World Cup title, but they always come up short against better teams. When I say come up short, you're talking just very slim margins. I can't explain it. I don't know what happens. This is a team that the longer a tournament goes, the less interesting they look. So, and that's I made that point on one of our previous episodes where you probably won't catch Belgium off on their heels off the hop. If you somehow advance and get them in the knockout stage, you might have a chance. But off the hop, this team comes out strong. But I can't explain it. I mean, how do you explain the Leafs? Again, sorry, Dan, I'm taking your hockey analogy. How do you explain the Leafs going out in the first round for 8 years in a row, 7 years in a row, right? When they've had teams on the ropes. I don't get it. It's just psychological. I have no idea, but I mean, that team is stacked. That team is absolutely stacked.
These teams, these tournaments are so hard to win too. Not only do they only happen once every 4 years, but it takes a miracle. Argentina is another team that always looks like they should win and never does. The Netherlands was like that for years on the world stage.
Sure.
With, Wesley Schneider and Arjen Robben, those teams, you always thought that they were going to win, and they never did. Who would have thought that Brazil would have lost, what was it, 8-2, 7-1 in their own barn?
Yeah, 7-1 to Germany.
So that's what I mean. Like you play the games. If Davies plays, as Davies can, if Eustachio controls the middle, and Jonathan David's able to poke a few through in the middle, or sorry, up front, who knows? Anything weirder, stranger things have happened in sports. So,
look,
and I'm not just looking to Morocco either. I think that we're sort of their easy pickings to lose to us.
Oh, they're not.
But out of the three, they're the easy one to say that's the game that we're targeting to win.
To get some results for sure, but they will be tough.
They're probably gonna. Well, I shouldn't say, but they might be the toughest game in the round robin.
Randy made a good point with the Ice Tekka game, because when the pressure started coming on by Mexico, they were rolling it. They were firing on them at all cylinders, and they got out of there by the hair of their chinny chin chin. And the back line, there are some question marks. I don't think they're deep enough. Gutted for Donnell Henry. I mean, he got hurt during the warm-up of the previous friendly, and he ends up missing the World Cup just during the warm-up, the pregame warm-up. I mean, he was he was slotted in the starting lineup, and I just feel awful for him. But they're not very deep on the back end, so that's where they might have some problems. So you could have Davies running up and down as much as you want, but when those good teams get it rolling and the possession and they start moving the ball and, making their quick combinations and connections and start unlocking these guys, it could be ugly. I'm not trying to, I'm sitting here saying I don't know. I mean, like I said, I expect a super competitive output from this Canadian team. I just don't know if the results will be there.
Well, like Dano said earlier, that's why you play the games. So it's anybody's guess how group stage will end, and especially within Canada's group between Belgium, Croatia, and Morocco. Very quickly, I think I think it's safe to say that a lot of the country really fell in love with this national squad. Alphonso Davies came out of nowhere. He scored perhaps the greatest goal in World Cup qualifying altogether. And it's funny. When I was in San Antonio, Texas in October of 2021, and to have a conversation of the cab driver who was originally from Mexico talking about Edmonton and how cold, and this was before the Mexico match, and he was just so nervous about how cold Edmonton was going to be during Azteca. And like I mentioned, everything just seemed to be coming roses for soccer in this country. The men's team actually qualifying for the World Cup, and these days we're hearing a lot of Canada soccer and some shortcomings that have happened, that have taken place, allegedly have taken place. Apparently allocation money has been should be filtered out a lot more diligently with the women's side, and a lot of allegations of misspending from the men's team on the towards the executive committee. Tony, has that kind of taken the steam out of what had taken place with regards to qualifications? Have you noticed it at all?
No, I mean at the time I was not happy with what they did. When you have your truest of true fans, the ones that travel, the ones that pay for flights, the ones that pay for tickets, fly over to Vancouver and get, 2 hours before the game starts, you protest it. I'm not a fan of that, and I get it. Sometimes you have to do these things to be heard. That's fine. I'm not familiar with the business of Soccer Canada. I can't imagine there is a huge treasure chest of gold and silver within the coffers of Soccer Canada. I could be wrong. I know there was a deal they struck with some soccer business agency. I forget the name. I should have done my research. I'm sorry, but I was expecting Frank to answer this question, but he's not here. So there was something with that, but I don't know if I just wish there was another way the players did it. I think we're over it. I think we're ready to watch them play in the World Cup. We're excited to see them. But at the time I was not happy. And again, I don't know. I don't know how much money Soccer Canada has available to them to give them all the luxuries that are required. I'm definitely seeing a lot more Gatorade and Nike commercials with the Canadian players on it and this and that. I don't know if that's has something to do with their new deal or whatever, but I didn't like the decision at the time. I didn't think it was the right one.
Well, maybe everything will be put aside when the World Cup officially begins on the 20th. Canada's first match is, of course, against Belgium. So, guys, so why don't we head right over to not only the National Basketball Association and the NHL, but specifically of Kyrie Irving and Mitchell Miller. So Mitchell Miller may not be a name that is familiar with a lot of sports fans, and we will get into him in a few moments. But once again, Kyrie Irving has made headlines for something that is not about basketball. And he had, forgive me, but had retweeted a link for a feature that, if I'm not mistaken, was produced by Alex Jones or supported by Alex Jones. Alex Jones, the conspiracy theorist podcaster, formerly of InfoWars. And this was a film that reportedly had anti-Semitic views and positions. Because of Kyrie Irving's support and apparent lack of contrition in the very beginning, he was suspended. And once again, Kyrie Irving is quite the contrarian of everything. Dan, I don't even know where to begin with Kyrie Irving, but if you can sort of put everything together here, like, I'm getting a headache just thinking of this guy. But I mean, do you think the NBA made the right move in suspending him, albeit for a minimum of 5 games?
I don't know. I know that I think Chappelle nailed it in his SNL monologue this past weekend. I said Kanye got in so much trouble that Kyrie got in trouble. It was the complete wrong time to weigh in on that topic, or even passive aggressively give your 2 cents or whatever your view may be, or support any sort of controversial viewpoint on that topic. So I don't know. It seems like a bit of a slippery slope to me. Irrelevant whether or not you favor or are in disagreement of of what he was, I guess, trying to imply by linking or sending out a link to that movie on Amazon. I don't know that you can take away his right to do so, whether or not he's right or wrong. By removing a guy from the league for a minimum of 5 games, to follow that with a laundry list of things that here are stuff that you need to do now before we'll let you back in the game. I don't know. It feels weird. It feels like you're not in favor of free speech, or you're not in favor of all those things. But then there's, on the other side of this, stuff like that is dangerous. Speech like that is dangerous. Promoting, pieces of, I don't even want to call them art, but pieces of, I don't know if they're just the copy or context or whatever they are. It can be divisive. It can be dangerous. It can have a ripple effect, especially because you are Kyrie and because you're seen as a leader, in the league, and because whether or not you want to be that guy, kids look up to you. They hang on to what you say, and so to Tony's point, if everything revolves around money, you got to know better if you're going to be a corporate sponsor. If you're going to be a corporate guy, that's not how corporations work. They don't want to be involved in that conversation. They just want people to buy their products, not have to associate them with anti-Semitism because of one of their guys in their commercial, intimated as something that, I don't know if he was doing it to prove a point or just to cause controversy, or I'm not sure why he was doing it, what he was doing it, but I don't know that the NBA is, implicitly right in this also.
Well, that's exactly what I have no idea either. And is this something that he did, without thinking? Does he have a certain viewpoint that jived with this particular feature? But, from walking away from the Cleveland Cavaliers the way that he did, walking away from the Boston Celtics, not wanting to play in the bubble because of the shooting of the black Wisconsin man at the hands of police, Jacob Blake, to not wanting to take the vaccine. I mean, of course, with regards to the latter, it's really, really polarizing topics. And Kyrie Irving is taking the contrarian point of view, if you even want to call it that, depending on where you are in said topic. You know, Tony, I'd really love to. I am very interested, of course, in your opinion. You and I definitely have differing views when it comes to certain social matters. You know, I don't know where to start from this either. You know, from you know, as I bring you into this conversation with regards to Kyrie Irving, you know, is he being unfairly judged in this, or is he just a drama queen looking for attention? What sticks out in your mind?
Well, 2 years ago he was more than an athlete. Now he's shut up and dribble. That's what I think of it. Listen, first of all, we got to get our facts straight. The Alex Jones thing he retweeted was something he said back in early 2000s about stuff that he was predicting future stuff, a lot of stuff that became true. Now, I'm not an Alex Jones fan, but this was stuff he was floating around. So that's completely different from a picture of the movie that he posted. The movie is called Hebrews to Negroes, which has been a book since 2014 and has been on the Amazon platform since 2018. So all of a sudden, Kyrie Irving posts a picture of this movie, and boom, everybody all of a sudden knows about it. This documentary has elements of Holocaust denial in it, and it is a part of the movie that Kyrie didn't see eye to eye with, if people want to listen to him actually speak. But he was intrigued by other aspects of, the history of Black people in Israel, the Jewish connection that is there with Black people, and how, there might have been an exodus of Black Jewish people at the time. This is a rough understanding from what I've read of it, from people who've actually watched it in account. I listened to Jason Whitlock a lot, and he caught about 75 minutes of the movie. He found it extremely boring, but some of the subject, but he said that's the biggest problem. So we are quickly jumping all over Kyrie. I don't remember when it became illegal or wrong to watch anything that is available on a platform for you. Regardless of what the subject is, you should be allowed to watch it. You might not agree with it, but you could find it intriguing. I might want to watch something on, how Hitler managed to get everybody in line and do what he did. I don't think it's wrong for me to sit there and say, wow, how did he manage to get all the, it's pretty crazy how he managed to get. Doesn't mean I agree with it. It doesn't
Sure.
mean and this is, and I agree with Dan on the slippery slope that you start to infringe on free speech. But what I got out of this, guys, is the tremendous hypocrisy, because he's not playing to the script, the script that is supposed to be the script that the masters are going to give you. All of a sudden you become, Mr. persona non grata. Like I said, 2 years ago, he was more than an athlete. He was front and center. Black Lives Matter t-shirt, first guy on his knee, first guy to talk about, not playing that night when Jacob Blake did get shot. And now all of a sudden it's shut up and dribble. This has more to do than that tweet.
Sorry, just to chime, just yeah, okay, because what I wanted to add to that was, and I don't know, because I don't really follow Kyrie Irving's day to day, but I think kudos to him for not playing in the bubble. My question is, however, what has he done with regards to Black Lives Matter since? He might have done a million things, but I haven't seen.
What has anybody done? What has anybody done other than virtue signaling? Most people in the NBA, what have they done? It's all virtue signaling, Randy. That's my point. and Black Lives Matter themselves have made a boatload of money off of their cause over the last 2 years. But that's neither here nor there. I'm talking about Kyrie Irving and how it's amazing if the narrative slips just a little bit, you become from this to this. And again, Kyrie Irving is a guy I'd never have on my team. He's too out there, but he sure as hell is a man, and he's a man who's allowed to think for himself. And the 5-game suspension was crazy because that's, you get a 5-game suspension for putting a picture of a movie on is nuts to me. And now you're seeing the narrative flip from some of his detractors in the media and fellow athletes because, the New Jersey Nets put all these blocks up and said, you've got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this before you come back. All of a sudden, they're not too happy about it. LeBron James, I'll give him credit, after condemning, Kyrie, he came out and said, these guidelines that you've set for him to come back is not good. The NBA has put themselves in a weird spot here. It's a very weird spot. And I've had a lot of time to think about it, guys. So, you guys could think I'm crazy or not, but, they have this social justice warrior shit going on up here. And then, the people they're beholden to, and let's be honest here, between China and corporate media and whatever that's owned by, mostly Jewish people, there's a clash now. So all of a sudden, this kind of suspension gets put on Kyrie, not to mention all the shit that he has to do just to get back, okay? And these demands are being handed down by a Chinese owner who totally supports the genocide of Uyghur Muslims in China. So the hypocrisy is now exploding. So there is no choice but for some of his fellow black athletes and people in the media of prominence, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharpton, these guys have to start switching the slit and saying, hang on a second, what you guys are doing to Kyrie is not right. So if you notice over the last week, it's kind of like, okay, well, we have to kind of support him here because there's a lot of hypocrisy going on. The point is, this is what happens when we put our stock in athletes as being social justice warriors or trying to be people. You're not going to get another Muhammad Ali. And you see it straight up because there's way too many powers above them that clash. And we're seeing, the residue of it now. And I feel strongly for this. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of Kyrie Irving either, but he's been wronged here. This is not right what they're doing to him. Not right at all.
Yeah, no, and it's, I guess, with regards to him having such different views with regards to some extremely big topics, and how he just seems to have this desire. I mean, I, for one, don't believe that he did what he did, not thinking that no one's going to notice. And that ever since he got to Brooklyn, well, maybe even before that in Boston, that his actions are never about the betterment of the team. It is always about him. It really is interesting how things are going to roll out. And I mean,
I agree. Listen, his from the time he asked to depart from Cleveland for whatever reason he had, to the time he spent in Boston, and to his wishy-washy ways, his back and forth, says, I'd love to come back to Boston, and he ends up signing with the Brooklyn Nets. Like, yeah, he's not a guy you can rely on. I'd never, absolutely, there's no question about it. But I applaud the guy for having his own brain, right? I applaud the guy for having his own mind. I mean, it's just what is being exposed now, like I said, is the hypocrisy. You have China saying we can't have someone like that on our payroll. We've got to cut ties with him. But, fill in the blanks. Gee, really? You have morals now, Nike? It's all weird, man. It's all really weird. And I look at this stuff very closely and it bothers the hell out of me, right? Like it's, once upon a time, back in the day, one of my favorite people of all time, Muhammad Ali, if this was him, Jim Brown, John Carlos, Tommy Smith, he had Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they were behind him. They were behind him in support, solidarity. Now everybody's burying the guy because they don't want to lose their money train from the Masters. You know what I mean? Like from the people who hand them the script, Jalen Roses, the Stephen A. Smiths, LeBron James, these guys, Shaq and Charles Barkley, I was so surprised at their reaction last week. At least Chuck, I thought he was going to be, I'll give two guys credit through this, actually. I don't want to bury everybody. I think Jay Williams, ESPN.
I didn't catch his comments.
He's been very adamant about this. Why isn't anybody calling out Jeff Bezos and Amazon for having this thing on the platform since 2018? I think he's been good. And Jaylen Brown, too, who's the assistant vice president of the Players Association. He's been very supportive of Kyrie Irving. And I just think if you're going to act and tell me that you're a brotherhood and you stand together and you say, you've got to do it under any circumstances, not just under the script that's given to you by, the powers that be. You can't only talk about one thing, but you're not allowed to talk about, if you want to be true social justice warriors, nothing should be off limits. Nothing.
Well, okay, and I definitely agree with that, and I definitely hear what you're saying with that, and I definitely want to talk about Mitchell Miller in a moment, but when such items come up, Kyrie Irving and this one tweet, for example, what really is a peeve of mine is, well, you're focusing on Kyrie Irving, but then what about Jeff Bezos and Amazon? Which I get it, it's valid. But then you're talking about, the atrocities of and then you're bringing in all these other factors in. And I guess what my question is, which nobody can answer, when does stuff get resolved? I mean, like the whole thing of bringing a questionable action to the forefront, it gets buried with all these other things that wouldn't have been brought up if there wasn't an initial issue to in the first place. You get what I'm getting at here, Tony? Like, do you see what my?
Oh, I agree 100%. They're going after Kyrie. This isn't just about that tweet. Trust me. His vaccine stance last year still doesn't sit well with the NBA. Believe me. Just like they're cheering Aaron Rodgers, that he's losing as much as he is with the Packers, they're not going to let this go. And it comes down to money again. Randy, trust me, Pfizer, Moderna, the amount of money they dump into advertising through sports, through mainstream media is unbelievable. They can't have a guy off script. Shut your mouth, boy.
Well, I mean, whether it's directly from the league or just the fact that people are not really allowed to have much of an opinion, and that is either with regards to celebrities or maybe even our own families. It's definitely a lot more difficult to have a differing point of view these days, guys. Very quickly, and maybe a lot more intriguing, for lack of a better term, is Mitchell Miller. Now he is I can't remember if he's a 18-year-old, 19-year-old. He's a young NHL prospect, originally drafted by the. Sorry,
he's 21, 22 now.
Okay, and he was originally drafted by the Arizona Coyotes, but then word came out of some very egregious things that Miller did as a younger child, specifically bullying a black classmate who does have developmental issues. Arizona released him without playing an NHL game. Then the Boston Bruins came out of nowhere and agreed to sign him. But then when more accusations, or maybe just an echoing of what Miller did as a 13-year-old kid, came to light, Boston decided to let him go. Dano, I don't know if you are fully aware of what took place with Mitchell Miller. I know that you weren't originally asked to comment about this, but with regards to Mitchell Miller specifically, should he still be accountable for what he did, albeit 7-8 years ago?
Should he still be held accountable for it?
Well, I mean, I guess that's the main reason why he is not under contract. There was a belief that he wasn't as uh, apologetic, contrite in trying to make amends. It was rather wishy-washy. For me personally, I've been thinking about this, and should a child be especially when you do have one of those rare opportunities like playing professional sports, making millions of dollars. Look, we as 13-year-olds may not have the maturity that we do have now, but a 13-year-old can recognize when they are being a bully. And I think that this is something where I do think that if Mitchell Miller is made an example of, I think I think that will be a better move for society. I really do believe this. This may not be the most popular opinion amongst the two of you. I happen to really applaud this. I mean, the fact that Miller is having this difficult a time and may never play NHL hockey, I think that this is an example that kids do have to be accountable, whether you get to play in the pros or not. If you are a teenager, a young teenager, an adolescent, the whole you being 12, 9, 13, 16 years old shouldn't make a difference anymore. Dano, I mean, Tony, I'm sure you're going to comment soon. As fathers, am I being unreasonable here?
Me first, or sorry?
Well, Dano hasn't spoken in a bit.
Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, if you did have an immediate comment to what I said.
Let Dan have it first.
Yeah.
I'll take a shot at it too.
Yeah.
I think the Bruins know that they screwed this one up. And I'll say that from the standpoint of, it seems this episode might be called Hypocrisy in Sports, because it seems that up and down the board, everything that we're talking about, some level of hypocrisy to it. But, yes, 14-year-old kids make mistakes. I don't know that it was as innocent as, some people categorize it as a one and done situation, as some of the Bruins front staff tried to hide behind the fact after they ultimately decided to terminate his contract, to say that we thought it was an isolated incident. Some of the reports say that Mitch Miller, for years tormented this disabled kid, which is among the lowest of the low. Even for a 13-year-old. I had some of those guys in my high schools and elementary schools that they didn't care if they were picking on, people in the special ed class, or people in wheelchairs, or people with missing appendages, or wherever.
Yeah, sure.
Or lips, sorry, right? So, what he did was despicable. From all accounts, anyway. Again, throw a big fat asterisk across everything I'm going to say, because obviously I wasn't there. But from the accounts that I've read, from the reputable sources, and hearing both sides and watching the story unfold, what this kid did when he was 13, 14 years old, maybe even before that, maybe a little bit after that, was, something that, if an adult was doing, we as a society, we would be happy to see them do some time behind bars. Now, he was also born with a God-given talent to play hockey. So Arizona drafted him, and then, let him go. Until the Bruins re-signed him, like you said, Randy, out of seemingly nowhere, where it's not like this is a team that starves for talent, or a team that, is missing their whole front line due to injuries and needed somebody who can come play and put the puck in the net. That's not the case with the Bruins. Like, they're a stacked team. They've got a good farm system. They've got a great They've been one of the teams in the NHL who is somebody to look to as a model franchise that that treats their players right, that gives the players their voice, and is a good community leader. It's all these sort of things that, again, it's a corporation, that it's a safe way for them to go to not segregate their customers, their fan base, and to bring as many people along for the ride as possible, because sports is supposed to be the great uniter. So nobody heard about this kid, or it was even forgotten until the Bruins signed him out of nowhere. So now all of a sudden, and I don't want to say poor Mitch, but poor Mitch got thrown back into the spotlight through, faults not of his own. This was the Bruins doing that, took him and dragged him into the spotlight to say, we've signed this kid, who's not even eligible to play in the league, but we won't bother looking into that. We won't bother, trying to do due diligence with the victim or his family or anything like that. And then, good for Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand and David Krejci and the leadership group in that team to stand up and say, as a group of hockey players, this isn't the kind of distraction that we want or need in our dressing room. Whether or not he's good enough to play in the league is irrelevant. We stand with the original decision that Arizona did to say that, he's out of our pipeline, and that the NHL to remove him from the eligible player list. And, and we don't want to welcome that sort of scrutiny, because some of our players may even have children with disabilities, or our families. We may know a lot of people. So, we don't want to condone that, even if we're not condoning it per se, because everybody deserves a second chance, yada, yada. But that's not to say that, we're not trying to remove this guy from society. We're just saying that we don't want him, or need him as part of what the Boston Bruins as an organization, as a community leader, as somebody who, and let's be honest, in the Boston market, needs to be a great team, or else people are, they're going to start to slowly tune out because there's too many options. There's, I don't even know that the Bruins, as far as, if Toronto is a Leafs town, I would imagine that Boston is a Red Sox town, first and foremost, maybe Patriots most recently just with Brady, but really, baseball is the sport in Boston. So, why welcome that kind of negativity or that kind of, undue press, or even to put this poor kid who should have served his time and, should have, started looking for, different ways to be a member of society, to contribute. You don't have to be a hockey player, and you don't have to play in North America. He could have signed in the KHL. He could have signed in the Swiss League. He could have signed anywhere he wanted and made money playing hockey. But, it's a little bit too close to home. It's a little bit too emotional, especially when it comes to kids. A lot of people don't, that's sort of a line in the sand where, it's you're either with us or against us. And, and truthfully, I'm with the Bruins and what they ultimately did, especially, I've always been a Patrice Bergeron fan, even though he knocked us out in 2003 Game 7. But, he's a stand-up guy, and you'd have to, again, you'd have to admire him for taking a stand and saying that, as players, as the leader of this group, it's not something that I want and we want in our dressing room. And, and they put their feet to the fire of Bruins management to, ultimately undo what they did.
Tony?
You know what? I'm really torn with this. And from personally, from my standpoint, my older daughter is on the spectrum. So as a parent of somebody who's on the spectrum, and again, she's high functioning, she's wonderful. There's no total disability there. However, there is a vulnerability. These types of kids are vulnerable. They're vulnerable to wanting to fit in, want to be a part of social scenes. So it is easier to manipulate kids like that, get them in, and then make them do things. And so as the parents of that young man, I feel for them. I really do. Like,
I'm sorry, the hockey player or the victim?
The victim.
Okay, good.
As I feel for them so much, because those are my fears every day, man. with her going to school, she's at an age now where she wants to fit in socially. Sometimes it's not easy to make friends. So you find yourself end up being in situations where maybe some people will start making you do things you don't want to do. So, man, so it brings up that anxiety that I get as a parent when I think about her. However, ultimately the question becomes, how long is long enough that someone has to pay for a mistake they made when they were kids? And they were kids, Randy, like 13, 14 years old. You're not developed mentally still. And we all made mistakes as kids. Now, playing in the National Hockey League is a privilege, not a right. Mm-hmm. So it's totally within the league's right to say, we can't make this kid eligible. Again, you're right, Dan. He can go to Europe and play. Is the mob going to stop him from playing there too? Like, is the Hockey Diversity Alliance going to step in and say he shouldn't be playing in the Euro leagues too? I don't know, because it seems like when they got involved in this as well, then the message started getting a little weird. From one aspect, apparently, there was an apology by the kid. And then from another aspect saying there was never apology. And then all of a sudden the family never accepted the apology, the victim's family.
Right.
So again, the lines get blurry, and second chances are second chances. Everybody deserves them. I don't know the answer. I'm throwing the question out there. How long is too long? It's a difficult situation, but like I said, as a parent, I understand the fears of the family. I understand what that family is going through. I'm sure it's difficult. The Boston Bruins tried to slip one through the goalie, excuse the pun, for sure. And it backfired big time on them. But I wonder, when I think of the Hockey Diversity Alliance, which is, again, on a previous episode, I think it was a great idea for hockey to have something like that in the picture, because it does need to grow the game of hockey. But man, if you talk about a culture of hazing that the NHL, that hockey players have, I would imagine Brad Marchand was involved in some serious shit when he was younger and this and that. So we have to, again, no, listen to what I'm saying. Like,
no, I'm with you. I'm agreeing with you. But please.
But again, it just goes back to my question: how long is too long? It's 7 years now, 8 years. He doesn't have the right to play in the National Hockey League. I get it, but in 5 years from now, if a team tries to sign him, are we going to jump down everyone's throats and stop it from happening? Because I think that's what's kind of happening, and I think a nice solution would be for the Hockey Diversity Alliance, Mitchell Miller and his agent, and the NHL, and the victim's family, maybe to get together and figure this out in a non-canceling way for a change, have a conversation. And if the parents at that point still want nothing to do with it, still say no, then we can move on, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? I think it was just...
Well, no, I do. And I think the one thing that I am not hearing as much is, how is the victim able to cope and move on with what he experienced?
Absolutely.
And that this hockey player, and with Arizona originally drafting him, with Boston trying to sign him, that a lot of the focus could have very well have been Mitchell Miller's road to redemption. And I think far too much people are more focused or more interested in how the person responsible gets a second chance. Meanwhile, victims have never been really truly able to recover. So it's such a difficult topic. Yeah, and in the end, you just got to really hope that this young man who experienced a lot at the hands of Mitchell Miller and that victims everywhere, whether it's developmental issues, people who've gone through sexual violation, everything.
Mm-hmm.
That victims do get a chance at overcoming all the unfair, egregious things that may have happened. Guys, I don't know if we've ever been through this deep a conversation, this deep into the podcast, but that being said, I'd love to end things off how things usually end off, and that is deal or no deal. So you guys know the drill. Why don't we just get right to it? And Dano, the Houston Astros have won their second World Series in 5 years. They had been to the league championship game, I think, if it's not 7 years straight, 6 years straight. They've been on a very impressive run. However, in 2017, they were implicated in various forms of cheating. There hasn't been any indication that the Houston Astros cheated in 2022. However, there does seem to be a number of people, myself included, who can't shake away what took place 5 years ago. The Houston Astros winning the World Series this year. Is that a big deal or no big deal?
I'm not sure which one would be which way, so I'll rephrase it this way: where it's what happened 5 years ago is not representative of who this team is. It's, I think, to what we were just talking about before, where, they were implicated in the cheating scandal, and the people who were around at the time were punished. Some of them, pretty severely, as far as years removed from the league. And, as far as the players on that team that are still around from that time, I don't think it's much.
Not a lot. The World Series MVP is playing for Toronto now.
Right. So, you've got a handful of guys. These are all, really skilled baseball players. They didn't win because they cheated. I'm sure it helped, but again, just proving their own point that, how many CLSs in a row, 4 now, how many division championships in the last decade, who knows? So they're, they cheated on their way to the top. They got caught, but they proved to everybody that it wasn't a fluke, and they came back and they won again. So, hats off to them, to the new ownership, Dusty Baker, and even to the guys who stuck around and played their way through that, and having people bang on trash cans at every visiting ballpark that they went into for a little bit. So, to the Altuves and Bregmans and Gurriels, congratulations. It doesn't make me like you anymore, but I can't hold it against you forever.
Well, that sounds like a big deal if I was to judge what you just said. But I actually did have a one-on-one interview with Dusty Baker when he was the manager of San Francisco, and it was the first time Barry Bonds was playing in Toronto, and I'll never forget that interview. It was one of the peaks of my albeit very brief journalism career. But speaking of getting back to this segment, guys, the Ottawa Senators, they have been in the league now. This is their 30th season. And say whatever you want about the Senators, they don't really seem to have that kind of mass appeal outside of the nation's capital. However, there does seem to be some real interest from an A-list Hollywood celebrity in purchasing the Senators. Ryan Reynolds, star of such movies like Deadpool, is rumored to be interested in purchasing the Sens. He is a British Columbia native. And of course, hockey does run through those Canadian veins. Tony, with Ryan Reynolds potentially seeking ownership of the Sens, is that a big deal or no big deal?
Average deal, I guess. I mean, first of all, Ryan Reynolds Sports and Entertainment Corporation. The guy's He currently owns Wrexham Football Club in Wales. They play in like the fifth tier of the British League, and now he's looking to buy the Senators. He's going to need a lot of sugar daddies to make that. I talked about that on one of the shows he was on, one of those unfunny late night comedians, and he talked about needing sugar daddies. So he's going to need a lot of them. It would be cool for sure. It would be cool. Ryan Reynolds is a great face for our country. He's proud to be Canadian, and I don't know how serious he is or not, but if he was, I think it'd be cool.
I mean, I
from
sorry.
the past ownership when teams go up for sales, that Gary Bettman does not like it when people make their intentions to buy public. So I'd imagine that Ryan Reynolds has already shot himself in the foot, unless the fans in Ottawa, completely take this over and turn it into something that that they weren't anticipating. But I can't imagine that Gary Bettman's happy about this. But if I may just jump in and give my 2 cents on it, I think it would be ultimately good for Ottawa, because to Tony's point, I didn't even know where Wrexham played. Somebody had to tell me it was in Wales, and it's because Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhaney bought it. So they come with that marketing eye, with that way of finding exposure and creating dollars around it. So it could be good for the team in the long run, where if he puts together a group and they find a way to market it on a global or even across the country, or even into the States, could generate more money into payroll, which ultimately leads to a better team. So it could be good for the city. It would be really good for the country, again, to have this proud Canadian boy, as long as he hasn't, it doesn't turn out that he's verbally abused anybody in the past 10 to 15 years. So it could be good. Could be good.
I honestly, I'm really torn on this one, because if the Senators don't get that downtown arena, I don't think it makes a hill of beans at all. I don't think it makes any difference at all. If LeBreton Flats does become the new home of the Ottawa Senators, apparently it's the real difference maker for the Sens being a lot more accessible to people in that area. I mean, does LeBron James make any difference having a piece of Liverpool, and does Alex Rodriguez make much of a difference owning the Minnesota Timberwolves? But whatever it takes to have the Senators remain in Ottawa, then I'll be definitely for it. So, be interesting. Ryan Reynolds being an Ottawa Senators owner. We'll see. But finally, Canada's men's basketball team has qualified for the World Cup. Truthfully, obviously, Canada's men's team has really taken an evolution and have really skyrocketed towards respectability, with some very key names potentially being on the World Cup roster. Now, none of those players were around during qualifying. But men's basketball, Tony, is an event that I personally don't really get that too hyped about. I love basketball, and I developed such an appreciation, especially after the Raptors won the championship. But it's always going to be USA and nobody else. And with regards to Canada qualifying for the World Cup of basketball, in your opinion, is that a big deal or no big deal?
I didn't even know it happened.
So that is easily to identify that it's not a big deal.
That's how focused I was on this whole thing. I mean, I assume our best players weren't there anyway, because they're busy playing in the NBA. The on again, off again participation by some of our best players has soured me, and my attention span for Canada basketball is very, very low right now. So honestly, I didn't even know that happened. I didn't know they were playing games. So yeah, I guess no big deal is my answer.
Yeah, no, and actually, I'm not going to lie to you. As I quickly type up where the next basketball World Cup is going to be, looks like it's going to be the 25th to September 10th in. Doesn't even say where it's going to be. So in Indonesia. Anyway,
Google's like, huh? I don't know.
No, it's just being bombarded with World Cup of Soccer searches and so on. Listen, guys, it's always such a great treat to chat and talk about sports. Of course, there are some very, heavy topics that we did go through, but maybe we could definitely bring it back like episodes past where we talk about some more uplifting topics. To Tony, Antoniou, Dan, Leggieri, the pleasure is definitely all mine.
Thank you.
And for Tony and Dan, I am Randy Kure. This is a What's Up the Sports podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We will talk to you next time.